Okay, you guys ready to go? Chair Thompson?
I'm ready. Are you ready, Tony?
Ready.
Okay.
Okay, before we start, let's just go over a few housekeeping materials. First of all, if you're just now joining us, is that me with the... Am I giving feedback, Michael? Is that somebody else?
Mute everybody else. Why don't you just mute everybody else unless they need to talk?
Okay. All right, sounds like we're good. Okay, so anyway, back to the meeting. This meeting is being, so first of all, everyone should be muted on their entry. Once you unmuted yourself, which I'm going to mute everybody real quickly. When it's your turn to speak, please go ahead and unmute yourself. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. So Tony Gillum is here as a court reporter, so please speak slowly and clearly so she can get everything. Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind swearing everyone in individually. Still getting some feedback here.
Are you talking about at the time they get ready to testify or now?
Yeah, rather than swear everyone in as a group, just swear them in individually when it's their case. That way we can get them on video as being recorded, which is what we do normally.
Right.
Then, as usual, staff will present. The board will ask questions of staff or the applicant, and then the applicant can present. The board can either ask if there's anyone from the public, if there's anything to say, and then we'll turn it over to the applicant for rebuttal. I believe we have one preliminary item. Phil, if you want to go ahead and take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. We do have one preliminary item. The applicant for GC 19019, 6440 East Broad Street, which was approved in June 2019. I believe the applicant is here, Mr. Kozar, to request a one-year extension, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, would the applicant please speak up, board, however we want to make this so I can swear you in. Mr. Kozar? Are you muted? No.
He's not muted, no.
He calling user 5.
Back in. Hello?
There you go.
Am I in?
There you are, yes.
Sorry about that. I thought I was getting ready to hang up and call back in again. Yeah, this is David Kozar.
Okay. Sir, I need to ask you to swear, tell the truth, no, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you repeat your name for the record and your affiliation to the case?
Yeah, David Kozar with Indus Hotels, and we are the owner of the property for East Broad Street there that was referenced by Phil.
And you'd like to have us tape or extend this? Is that your request?
Yeah, the current economic conditions for us is not feasible for us to continue moving on at this time, so we're asking for an extension on this for another year until this subsides.
Okay. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion to extend this for 1 year?
Yes, this is Mike Hoy. I would like to make a motion to extend this case for a year.
And this is Rich Pashinsky. Rich Pashinsky will second it.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion of extending this case for 1 year because of the economic conditions, use the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the case is extended for 1 year from this date.
Great, thank you all.
Okay, I believe that was the only preliminary matter.
We're good. I'll call in.
So Mr. Thompson, if you're ready, we can go ahead and Hold on one second.
Thanks.
I'll close out my app. Go.
Still hear you and see you.
Mr. Bender, can you please mute yourself when you're not talking or voting? There you go. Thank you.
Okay. If that's the last of the preliminary business, we'll go to the first case, which is GC 21770 Kinnear Road. Would the applicants please step forward so that I can swear you in one at a time? And would you please give your name and your affiliation to this case?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Steve Moore with More Signs. I'm the applicant for this project, and with me is Ms. Sharon Sindrich. She is the client rep for Lifeline of Ohio, and she would like to speak today as well.
Okay, I need to swear both of you in. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Would you repeat your names for the record and your affiliation to this case?
Sharon?
This is Sharon Sindrich. I'm Director of Communications for Lifeline of Ohio.
Would you mind spelling your last name? Oh, there it is on the screen. Thank you. Sir, would you repeat your name for the record and your affiliation to the case?
Steve Moore, More Signs, applicant for the project.
Okay, thank you. Who's presenting this one, Mr. Freeze?
Yes, I am. Okay. 770 Kinnear Road is located at the northwest corner of Kinnear Road and State Route 315, right off exit ramp 3. There is no current area commission, and the zoning district is C2 commercial. The site is developed with the Lifeline of Ohio offices, an organization that facilitates organ, eye, and tissue donation. The applicant requests the ability to install a 187 square foot permanent seasonal banner directed State Route 315 that will change every 3 or 4 months. The banner standards are as follows. A banner shall be displayed only on premises and in compliance with the following. Banner shall be displayed for no more than 30 continuous calendar days within any 12-month period for any address, and graphic area shall not be more than 16 square feet. So again, the request is to increase the allowable graphic area from 16 square feet to 187 square feet, and to increase the display time from 30 days to permanent. The Planning Division has reviewed this and state that the Olentangy West area plan discourages signs that are oriented towards the freeway. As such, planning does not support the request. Staff notes that the plan also recommends that signs be placed such that they are keeping with the scale and the size of the building facades and do not interfere with architectural lines and details. City staff recommendation as a whole is disapproval. As stated before, the code provides for limited freeway exposure of signs for auto service and oriented businesses, such as gas, restaurant, and hotels. Staff has consistently recommended disapproval of variance requests for other uses because the code's recognition of the need to limit highway signs for safety. With that, we will turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, sir or ma'am, would you please present your case?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Jamie. I would like to note that the Olentangy West plan does request that the signs be scaled to the size of the building and facades. We're at this 187 square feet because there is a space that was proper for this size, and we feel it does fit the building well. Safety issues, it's been proven by the Outdoor Advertising Association that signage along roads is not the big safety issue that a lot of people feel it is. There is probably some concern about proliferation, but we feel that the need for the type of banner for this, what's the word I want, this company, or it's a nonprofit, so organization, and I would feel is needed. And I'll let Sharon take over because she has some things she'd like to say in regards to why they want to use this banner so much. Sharon?
Yes, thank you all so much for hearing us today. So Lifeline of Ohio, for those of you who don't know what we do, we are one of 4 organ procurement organizations. We are a nonprofit organization that facilitates the organ and tissue recovery for transplantation. So we are a CMS contractor. We are not a competitive organization. And we serve our local transplant centers, OSU and Nationwide Children's. And we also facilitate a decision if anyone decides they want to be an organ donor. And we then actually transport organs to hospitals all over our designated service area and beyond. We serve 37 counties in Ohio, which means, and 78 hospitals, which means if you have decided to be a donor and you are donating your organs or tissue, our teams go throughout those 37 counties to facilitate that decision and those gifts of life. So as an organization, one of the things that is really important to us, and our mission is to empower the community to save and heal lives through organ, eye, and tissue donation. And we have on our site, which you can see in one of these photos, we have a public memorial that is a memorial to those donors in our 37 counties who have actually been heroes of donation. It's a public memorial, open 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days to the public. And it's our gift to the community and our way of honoring those donors and the legacy that they've lived and the ripple effect that they have left on our community for the health and well-being of our community and Ohioans. So just to give you an idea, organ donation is a national crisis. Because the shortage of organs are so, people are waiting for organs, and 112,000 people today in the United States are waiting right now for organs. In Ohio alone, more than 3,000. And today, 20 people will die. That gift did not arrive in time. A big part of our role is to actually educate the community about the importance of donation and inspire people to register their decision in the Ohio Donor Registry. As part of the Ohio Revised Code, we actually provide education to high school students. Public schools are mandated to provide that education. So when students go to get their driver's license, they're educated and informed. We serve over 300 schools in our 37 counties and provide that, as well as community and faith organizations, community organizations. So part of our, our opportunity here is to continue that education, awareness, and advocacy that is so important to the health of our community. And one of the things I know that is of note is that it is facing the highway, but if you take a look at the photo of our building, we have a very unusual location. It's not really easy to find. It's right off of Olentangy Road behind a bank. So you can kind of see from this aerial view, our memorial is what you see here is this ripple. And there's a fountain there, as well as a wall on the right-hand side. We have large stainless steel memorial name engravings. And at night, like I said, it's open to the public, but it's very to see. So the front of our building just happens to be facing this very unusual kind of triangular little piece of land. And it is facing the highway, but if it wasn't, we would put it on the front of our building. If it was facing the train tracks, whatever it was facing. So I feel like it's kind of circumstantial. That's just the way our building is faced. But the memorial sits really at the foot of what would be our banner. And we use our banner very responsibly. Again, we're not competing with anyone, but it's typically, we use it for Donate Life Month, which is a national awareness of donation campaign. So we usually do something at that around the springtime. That's usually in April. We also use it to promote our Dash for Donation, which is our largest gathering and celebration. It's a 5K where we celebrate donation. We usually have 3,000 people that sign up, and we have a big run at Genoa Park, but we try to get the word out that way. We also typically do something in the fall and then something around the holiday season about giving the gift, the greatest gift. So that's typically what we do, but because we are very sensitive and our mission is really compassion and advocacy based in our values, when this COVID situation happened, we actually posted a banner, which has been hanging since we left our building in March, that basically just says, let's help each other. And we've connected that to a list on our website on how we as a community can help one another by doing a variety of things. One, obviously you can register to be a donor. You can participate in our Shawls of Support program where we knit shawls for our donor families. But we host blood drives there with Versity, which is a blood bank that serves our transplant center. So we've tried to be very community based. We're good community partners. We're very conscientious about what we post there. And I guess
your time is up.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Sure.
This particular banner, it looks like you may have, well, let me ask Jamie one first. Jamie, is there a community association for this area?
No, there's not.
Okay. It sounds like you have 3 or 4 times a year when you need to have a banner up for specific things or specific outreaches. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to limit the time for those and just to those 3 or 4 individual times a year as opposed to permanent?
Are you asking me that question?
Mm-hmm. Because that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So for me personally, I mean, again, I'm grateful for any opportunity we have to educate the public. So the longer things are up, the better. But yes, I mean, that certainly is an opportunity for us to consider that.
I don't know what the other commissioners think, but maybe, I don't know how long you usually keep a specific banner up, but a month or 90 days or 45 days or something for a particular banner and limit it to 3 or 4 times a year's time might make more sense to me. What do you guys think?
Chairman,
if I can just interrupt really quickly, Chairman Thompson, I'd like to address that. You are correct that we do limit banners to 30 days.
30 is fine. 30 is fine.
The applicant is asking for permanent. So that was going to be one of the, I guess, one thing staff was going to consider is, you know, due to Reed versus Gilbert, the Supreme Court case that no longer allows boards and commissions to regulate content, by approving a permanent banner, the variance goes with the building and they can put up anything they want. But if we do limit the time, you know, if the commission approves the size and then limits the time to, like you said, 4 months, 6 months, a year, the applicant will have to constantly come back every 4 to 6 months to apply for a new permit, which we can work on it so that they don't have to come back to the commission, but we can have it so that it's not a permanent banner and therefore doesn't defy the content regulation by the Supreme Court.
If they knew specifically, like they needed one in April, one in July, one in December or something, 30 days at a time, I might be open to that.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, who is your audience and where is this is facing? You're trying to face the freeway and have people on the freeway see this?
That's a good question.
Our audience is the 3.4 million people in our service area. So it's on the front of our building. Anyone that comes to our building or gathers at our building, we have several events a year where we gather people for holiday memory in honor of their donor hero or for a candlelight ceremony and a variety of things. So that's part of it, as well as yes, an opportunity for anyone in the area to find our location. As far as serving 37 counties, as you can see, our location is not an easy place to see. So it's been very helpful for us too, for
Your building sign is quite your building sign is quite noticeable because I see it every time I travel there. But this banner, I mean, looking even at the pictures that are in your thing, I don't know how anybody would ever see anything at all from the freeway at all. I mean, and I think Les's idea that you could put it up 30 days, 4 times a year when you're going to have your events on site and you're trying to educate your on-site people is much more appropriate than a permanent banner like that, personally.
Les,
Yes, sir.
Les, this is Mike Hoy. I'd like to talk about this for a second, if I may.
Go ahead.
I'm familiar with this. I'm very familiar with the site, and the plaza that is there is absolutely beautiful. I believe the public comes to this site quite frequently. So I know what Rich is saying is from the distance from the freeway where you actually really see the banner. I think you will, but not, it's not significantly big. But to me, if I had to say the importance of this, I think this banner is very important to this organization. And I think that probably 70% of the display time is really going to be the people that are in this plaza that are looking at the plaza, but they see these events that go on, and it is so true that donor people signing up for a donor on your driver's license, all that stuff is so important. It's going to save lives and all that. And then in addition to that, guys, you just go across the street over to OSU Medical Hospital. They have this one building that's got one gigantic wall display. Now the university doesn't have to go through graphics commission or anything like that. They're the state and they get to do what they want. And it's really far back, and it's seen, like when you exit 315, I think. But in my opinion, when I looked at the paperwork, I wasn't even familiar with it until I started looking at it, and I thought it was a pretty good idea. Now, as far as timing, maybe we could arrive at, I'd hate to have to see where they have to get a permit every time they get a new banner. It's a cost. It's, the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it could be in the.
Well, Mike, they would have to get a permit, an installation permit every time anyway. So that's a moot point whether the variance is approved or not.
Oh.
We're only increasing the time frame and the size.
Okay, so I thought the banner would be. How's that work? Like Downtown Development Commission? I'm sorry. On the Downtown Development Commission, all those wall graphics, they all get permits every time they change them out. Then maybe that's.
You get permits every time, yeah.
Okay.
Now, depending on how the commission votes today, if the commission does limit the installation period to 3 months, 4 months per display, then they would have to come back before the commission every year. Now, that'd be once a year. If you do 4 times in a year or whatever, and that's to prevent this from being a permanent sign, which again goes back to content in Reed versus Gilbert, where we give them carte blanche to do whatever they want.
So could
Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah. Could I speak a little bit?
Yes, who is that?
Did the commission have any more questions?
I just one more question on the time frame. If the commission said like they could have, just we're talking 4 months out of the year of display time, but could the organization choose the, like maybe we put a limit, like you can't have it up more than 30 days, but maybe they have it up 30 days and down 10, then they have another thing in 10 days, they put it up 30, but accumulatively over the year, over 1 year, they couldn't have it more than say 4 months. Is that, can you write it in like that, sort of?
You can, the commission can craft it any way they want to. The way their code reads now, it says 30 days per calendar year. So if you say 300 days per calendar year, then they can, and you can say you can have up to 4 displays in that 300 days. They'd have to come get 4 permits from zoning clearance, but then at the end of that 300 days, they'd have to come back to the commission to do it again every year. Does that make sense?
It does makes a lot of sense. So yeah, maybe maybe the applicant could address possibly that time frame as a way to do this.
Are you talking, Ms. Sandich, of 3 or 4 events that you might like to have a month?
Yeah, I would say we are typically almost quarterly. So again, at the holidays, in the spring, in the summer, and then typically a fall time frame. We have something different up there. We Donate Life Month is 1 full month, so that's usually April. So if we were limited, we would try to get it up April 1st and get it down on the 30th. To try to get folks, again, awareness for our events. We can certainly, work within that time frame. I would say there's usually no more than 4 times a year we're putting something up to change it.
Then you'd be open to conditioning this to have a maximum of 120 days with 30-day limit for installation and a 1-year time period.
Could I say a couple things, Mr. Thompson?
Yes, sir.
When I first talked to Lifeline of Ohio about this, I told them that they would have to probably get a permit for the banners, possibly each time it went up. Temporary signs under code right now, their permits last for a year and then they're renewable for another year. I would like to propose that they be allowed to put up 4 banners per year. The banners can be up for 2 months per banner, and we get a permit every year.
No.
For those 4 banners.
No.
And that they be allowed to change.
The limit is 30 days per temporary installation. So why would I'm not going to agree to half year, 6 months.
Well, I'm trying to compromise instead of between permanent and 30 days, request a variance to bump that to say 60 days per banner. That would be
240.
That would be up for 2 and down for 1.
No.
So there would be a 1 month wall between.
That's what the code says, and I don't really see why they would have to have it up more than 2 months at a particular installation, unless you can tell me why. And so I'm willing to go 4 installations at a month per, if you like to condition it that way.
Could we get them so that they're permitted once a year for all 4?
What do you say, Jamie?
Well, the Grass Commission doesn't have any purview on permitting, so we're relying again on time frame and size here. That's our only purview.
Okay. Well, we would have to rely on you to your integrity to do it as we agreed to, but are you willing to condition this request that way, or you want to put on it as it is?
Yeah, I just have a question. So if we're deciding that is that, and forgive me if I don't understand, but if let's say we were only going to decide to put 3 banners up, would we have the 120 days and be able to work with that, or would each one only be able to be up for 30 days?
I don't know. I was willing to say you could have the 120 days, but Jamie, is it still going to be limited by the code?
Again, Chair Thompson, you can craft it however you want. If you want to say they're allowed up to 120 days per calendar year, or 120 days per banner in a calendar year, and up to 4 banners, you can do that. It's all how comfortable you are in a calendar year.
Okay. Commissioners, what about 120 days maximum time for these banners, and if the temporary banner permit can last a year, that sounds like a good idea.
Wes, I'm agreeable to that. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, me too.
So agree.
Okay, can we condition it that way? And would you agree to being conditioned that way, Ms. Sendridge?
Can you explain it one more time to me?
Can you explain it to her, Jamie?
Yeah, so from what I gather from Chair Thompson and the commission, they're allowing you to increase the time frame to display a banner from 30 days to 120 days in a calendar year. At the end of the calendar year, you can then come back to the commission and apply for another variance to go for another 120 days, but you'll still have to get a permit for each banner that you install within that 120 days.
So wanted within the 120 days time period, but every time we get a banner, we would need a permit. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Can I want to make this clear. We're going to be allowed 120 days per year. We're allowed to put up 4 banners up to 30 days per banner. The permit will last for a year for all 4 banners that we can put up.
No, stop.
And we do not have to come back to we do not have to come back to the commission every year for approval for the variance.
No, that's not correct at all, Steve. Actually, if you guys want to talk, if you and your client want to talk about this, and then come back at the end of the meeting, and we can, if you want to formulate a plan, we can have this case be heard last. But basically, what's on the table right now is the chairman has offered to increase the display time for as many banners as you want, from 30 days to 120 days. Now, each one of those banners will require an installation permit. That variance is only then good for the year. So from June 2020 till June 2021, and if you want to extend that, you can come back to the commission and ask for an extension for free for another year or however long until the commission is tired of seeing it.
I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have to pay the total graphics commission fee every year we wanted to come back.
As long as you don't let the year lapse. Like you saw it in the preliminary matter today, we had a commission extension. That's what you would do every June then. Okay,
then I think that's doable. I just wouldn't want to have to come back to a full bore graphics commission process in a year to get approval again. But extension sounds good. I think the 120 days is good. I think Sharon is good with that. That lets her do the four different events in a year's time that she wants to do. So,
okay, we need to wrap this up. We're recommending then at this particular site, this variance is reasonable for a conditioned agreement as for having 120 days maximum in a year's time from this date. And we can vote on this as conditioned.
It was on mute. Do we have a motion?
Sorry, I didn't hear a second.
Rich Mashinsky will give a second.
Thank you. Mr. Bender?
Yes.
Mr. Carey?
No.
Mr. Mashinsky? Unmute.
Rich, or I didn't hear you.
You got it?
Mr. Mashinsky? We didn't hear you.
I'm going crazy. Yes, I'm nodding my
Thank you.
head.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hoy?
Yes.
Chair Thompson?
Yes, and it is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our next case is GC 20-012, 5320 West Point Plaza. The applicant please come forward.
Yes, Jim Hartley with Signcom.
Okay, thank you, sir. I need to swear you in. Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you repeat your name for the record and your affiliation to the case?
Jim Hartley, Signcom Incorporated, the applicant for this case.
Thank you. Who's presenting this one?
This is Michael Merritt. I'll be presenting.
Would you please?
All right, GC 20 at 5320 West Point Plaza Drive, located at the southeast corner of Hilliard-Rome Road and Winchester Boulevard, or Winchester Woods Boulevard. This is within the far west side CPD, Commercial Plan Development District. The 16.3 acre site is developed with a neighborhood shopping center. The tenant in question is located at the eastern end of the strip and has an existing 80 square foot wall sign identifying the use. Surrounding uses included restaurants and an automotive service station to the west, a gas station, supermarket, apartments, and an automotive service station to the north, a Walmart to the east and south, and a shopping center to the south. The applicant has installed a new wall sign on the southern elevation that is code compliant and proposes window signage on the entirety of the front windows. Variances are to increase the coverage for window signage from 25% to 100% of the window area and increase the allowable graphic area for all signs on the southern frontage from 169.71 square feet to 424 square feet. The Trayview Roberts area plan discourages signs that cover the entirety of the windows and doors, obscures architectural lines and details, and are not compatible with the size and scale of the storefront. The Far West Side Area Commission recommends approval, and despite the Trayview Roberts area plan, staff notes that mitigating factors to this request, such as the consideration of security for the proposed use and the application of the U.S. military guidelines and design, means we don't oppose the request. We can support it with the condition that the variances are limited to a tenant that is affiliated with the U.S. military. This is a recruitment center, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hartley, would you have anything else to present?
No, we did get the area commission support, and basically staff presented the case accurately. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Are you in favor of the condition as was read into the record of it having to remain affiliated with the U.S. military?
Absolutely. Yes, that makes perfect sense. Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
Yes, I have a question. I'm sorry. I'm not clear on what is meant in the staff summary by consideration of security for the proposed use. Can you explain that?
Yeah, this is, you can't see through it from the outside. They can see outside through it. So the military personnel inside will be able to identify a potential threat, I believe, if it's targeted.
Was that their stated request for having these windows covered?
That's what they said the norm for these recruitment centers is.
Okay. Did they agree? If they agreed to the restriction condition that it be for military purposes only, if there aren't any other questions, I would agree that this is appropriate for this location. And we could vote on that as conditioned.
Motion, second.
Mike Hoy, I second it. Rich Mashinsky.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Hoy?
Yes.
Mr. Bender,
Yes.
Mr. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Mashinsky,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Chair Thompson.
Yes, and it is approved as conditioned, sir. Thank you. Our next case is GC 20-013-115 East 5th Avenue. With the applicants, please come forward, identify yourself.
Hello, my name's John Stevenson.
Sir, I need to swear you in. Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you repeat your name for the record and your affiliation to this case?
My name's John Stevenson. I'm the attorney for the applicant.
Who's presenting this case?
I am Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
115 East 5th Avenue is located at the southwest corner of East 5th Avenue and Summit Street, served by the Italian Village Commission. It is zone C4 to the east and R4 to the west, which is where the pizzeria is proposed. The 0.66 acre site is developed with a mixed-use building, the subject tenant of which is DiCarlo's Pizza, located on the ground floor in the area of the parcel zoned R4. Surrounding uses include single-unit dwellings to the west and south, apartments, and a mixed-use development to the north, a restaurant to the east, and low-rise condominiums to the south. The applicant proposes to install one projecting sign for a ground floor pizzeria. Variances are to allow a projecting sign in a residential district, which is otherwise not permitted, and to allow an illuminated sign within 50 feet of a residential, which would be to the west. In August 2017, a council variance was passed to grant, among other development standards, a variance for commercial use within the residential district. There is no adopted plan in place for this portion of Italian Village, and the Italian Village Commission has issued a certificate of appropriateness for the projecting sign. City departments recommend approval. From a basic review, I've seen that the projecting sign is generally in compliance with standards that would be required for projecting and internally illuminated signs in a commercial district. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Stevenson, would you present your case?
Yeah, so as Mr. Benich explained, the issue here is that we have this council variance that allows us to have a commercial tenant at the bottom of this building. The council variance did not rezone that part of our building to a commercial district, so it's still considered residential. We just need these variances to permit a sign, which I believe, as Mr. Benich said, would otherwise be permitted in a commercial district in this portion of our building. We think that any illumination that might affect the neighbor would minimal or none at all, because that building is actually set back probably 10 or 15 feet from where our building is. So there's not going to be a lot of light pollution that comes from our building over to theirs. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Commission?
There are other commercial tenants in this area. None of them have illuminated or projecting signs. Is that right?
I believe actually the commercial tenant that is right on the corner of 5th and Summit of the same building. I believe. Yep, Zaptic. I believe they have an illuminated sign, and it's not projecting in the traditional sense, but it's on the awning.
Les, I have a home right up the street. It's not far at 9th and Summit, and I see this building many, many times. I think this is appropriate. It just fits in the area.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Not hearing any other comments or questions, I would believe that this is appropriate for this particular location. And just hearing no conditions, let's vote on this. Do I have a motion to vote on this as presented?
Rich.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, having been
All right.
properly moved and seconded, can we poll the members?
Yep. Mr. Mashinsky,
Yes.
Mr.
Did you say Mr. Hoy?
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Hoy,
Yes.
Mr. Bender,
Yes.
Mr. Carey,
No.
Chair Thompson.
Yes. And it is approved, sir. Thank you. Our next case is GC 20-014, 57 Lazelle Road. Would the applicant please come forward?
Hello, Jim Hartley with Signcom again.
Okay. Mr. Hartley, since you've already been sworn, I don't need to swear you again. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this case? No? Then, Mr. Bennett, are you presenting this one?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 57 Lazelle Road East is located at the southwest corner of Lazelle Road and Dilmont Drive, served by the Far North Columbus Communities Coalition. It's own commercial plan development. The 9.85 acre site is developed with a community shopping center. The subject use will be split off from the current parcel. Surrounding uses include retail, a car wash, and a restaurant to the west, 2 nursing homes and an AEP station to the north, apartments and offices to the east and south, and a medical clinic to the south. The applicant proposes to install 3 wall signs and 1 ground sign for a new enterprise rental facility. Variances for the wall signs are to increase the number of additional side or rear wall signs from 1 to 2, and to increase the maximum graphic area for both wall signs from 16 square feet to 20 square feet on the west and to 38 square feet on the north, respectively. So the ground sign does not need any variances. The Far North Area Plan recommends against excessively large signs that interfere with visual character or interfere with architectural details. The proposed signs are not excessively large and do not interfere with architectural details and are therefore supported by the Planning Division. The Far North Columbus Communities Coalition recommends approval of this request. City departments recommend approval. The Planning Division has determined that the proposed signs are not excessively large and do not interfere with architectural details and are therefore supported by the plan. We do recommend the condition that the sign exhibits be stamped. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jamie, Mr. Bennett, this is not a graphics plan, right?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Hearing no questions, it appears appropriate for the site. And we recommend that it be approved. The condition that's listed that the applicant shall commit to the stamped sign exhibits presented. You agree with that condition, sir?
Yes.
Okay, then do I have a motion for this approval?
I move forward with it.
Then do I have a second?
I will second it. Mike Hoy.
Can we vote on this then as recommended, conditioned?
Mr. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Pinsky,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Hoy,
Yes.
Mr. Bender,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes, and it is approved, sir, as conditioned. Thank you. The next case is GC 20-015, 409 McNaughton Road. Would the applicant please come forward?
Present. David Hodge, attorney for the applicant and property owner.
Mr. Hodge, I need to swear you in. Swear to the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you repeat your name for the record and your affiliation to this case?
David Hodge with the law firm Underhill and Hodge, attorney for the applicant and property owner.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, you're presenting this one as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. 409 McNaughton Road is located at the west side of McNaughton Road at the terminus of Little Deer Lane, served by the Far East Area Commission. It is zoned Restricted Rural Residential District. The 4.8 acre site is developed with a church building and associated parking. Approximately half of the parcel has remained woodland to the west side. There is an existing manual changeable copy ground sign located approximately 17 feet from the old right-of-way. The new right-of-way puts the sign on the property line. Surrounding uses are all single-unit dwellings. The applicant proposes to reface the existing ground sign along McNaughton Road with an electronic message center. The variances are to allow automatic changeable copy in a residential district, which is not otherwise allowed, to increase the graphic area of the sign devoted to changeable copy from 50% to 56%, to reduce the setback of the ground sign from the right-of-way from 15 feet to 0, to increase the allowable graphic area from 32 square feet to 55, to increase the height from 8 to 9 feet 4 inches. Staff notes that the use of the sign would be subject to the special effects restrictions in City Code 3377.08. C2P2 discourages automatic changeable copy signs. Planning Division staff also notes that C2P2 recommends that monument signs be no taller than 6 feet. The Far East recommends approval of this request. City departments recommend disapproval. The sign was legally established but is currently non-conforming because of the right-of-way acquisition. However, when the sign is changed from manual changeable copy to automatic, it loses its nonconformity status and must come into conformance with current standards. Far East has adopted C2P2, which discourages automatic changeable copy and recommend monument signs be no taller than 6 feet. If the sign would be approved, we recommend the sign exhibit be stamped. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Hodge, would you present your case, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Benich. Good evening, everyone. Great to see everybody. However, I wish that we were all together in person, and hopefully we get there sooner rather than later. Want to reiterate something that Mr. Benich said, and that is that this does come to the commission with a recommendation of approval from the Area Commission. I think that information is in your packet, and they voted 8-0 unanimously in support of the proposal. The other thing, I think, to attempt to simplify the request, it may seem like a number of variances, but really what this is, 3 of the 4 are to legitimize the existing condition of the sign. So the photograph that you saw and the exhibit that Phil had up are going to generally stay the same. The sign is going to remain the same size. It's going to remain in the same location, but we want to change out that face that you see over on the right-hand side, which is manual changeable copy, and we want to introduce electronic changeable copy, meeting the special effects guidelines. So we also request that we increase that face by 6%. 50% is allowed. We'd like to do 56%, and also to introduce this automatic changeable copy component. this is one of those areas where, as the city evaluates amending the code, that might be something worthwhile to look at. I do know that I think as staff mentioned in their report, or at least in their staff review results, and as the area commission indicated in their 8-0 recommendation of approval, that this is a variance that has been repeatedly requested, not just in this neighborhood, but all over town. Sometimes I like to think I'm good, but here I might have just been lucky. One of the members of this area commission happens to be a pastor of a church, and he indicated to his colleagues on the commission that this type of messaging is important for church functionality, to both get their message out to the public and to let their parishioners know what's going on at the facility. So that's all I have on it. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but would respectfully request that the variance request be approved.
So there's nothing really changing except for the fact that it's going from manual to automatic changeable copy.
That is correct. Increasing the face by 6%.
Where's the increase coming?
They're in the center, and I think it includes, and Mr. Bennett, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I know that you've spent a fair amount of time looking at this with my colleague here in the office, Eric Zartman, but it's the inclusion of both the address there, the 409 McNaughton Road, and that face there that you see there as the manual adds up to 56% total, whereas only 50% are allowed.
Okay.
Yes, to clarify, I just want to say that this physical sign is not increasing 6%. He's getting a variance because it's existing non-conforming. So the physical size is not increasing. It's just a technicality.
Right. The changeable copy is currently at 56, but it's manual. But it's already at 56%.
I see. Thank you.
I have a question, if I could.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that there was a commissioner who was a pastor at the church. Did that commissioner recuse from the vote, or did that person vote?
Well, what I hope I said is that he is a pastor of a church, not the pastor of this church.
Mistake. Thank you.
Yes, I had a question.
Go ahead.
Mike Hoy. Anyways, I think, isn't there a church on McNaughton, just not too far from here, that has an electronic message system also, I think?
That is correct.
And it's probably falls in the same, I mean, they already have their message system, but if they're going to widen McNaughton or whatever, I mean, it'll just stay non-conforming and all that. But anyways, with that said, I'd say this would be very appropriate.
Do we know if those other comparable signs predated C2P2 guidelines?
I don't personally know the answer to that question.
It seems to me that the C2P2... I'm sorry.
David, I was just going to let you know that both of them were, the one to the north was approved prior to C2P2. The one to the south along McNaughton was approved after C2P2 by the commission.
And the one to the south has an automatic changeable copy?
Correct.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Chair Thompson, I have one more question. Are both of those other signs to the north and the south changeable message signs, and are they of the similar size?
I would say the one to the north is smaller, but it has a higher percentage of automatic changeable copy sign. I believe it's 80% automatic changeable copy. And Dave Rice handled the one to the south, so I'm not that familiar with it. And Dave is off tonight, so I'm afraid I can't answer that. I can look it up for you really quickly if you'd like.
Are you talking about Prince of Peace Lutheran Church? Sorry, I'm looking on Google Street View as we speak.
Prince of Peace is the one to the south. And that's one Dave Rice handled. So if you're looking at it online, maybe you can answer the question.
I'm looking at it online. It looks like it's approximately the same size, maybe a little shorter. But that's just me eyeballing it. I can't tell for sure. And it's about 50% of the sign face, maybe a little less. Looks like it's changeable copy.
So the 56%, is that driven by the size of the monitor to this sign size in terms of what will fit?
This church is doing its best to conserve resources and is going to use its existing sign frame that you saw there from the photograph.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, 50% to 56% in doing what they're doing to conserve the sign itself. I would approve that.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I believe that this sign is appropriate for this location and that we can vote on it as conditioned. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mike Hoy, I motion to approve this.
And a second?
This is Rich Mashinsky. I'll second that.
Then can we vote on this as for the motion with the condition?
Mr. Bender,
Yes.
Mr. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Mashinsky,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Hoy,
Yes.
Chair Thompson.
Yes, and it is approved. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Okay, our next case is DC 20-016, 1650 Morse Road. Would the applicant please come forward?
Applicants present, Tracy Deal for the property owner and for Bank of America.
Thank you, ma'am. I need to swear you in. Swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but yourself, you got.
I do.
You already gave us your information, so we'll go ahead and get this presented. Mr. Freeze, are you doing this one?
Yes, I am. I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint. Okay, 1650 Morse Road is located on the north side of Morse Road, approximately 500 feet west of Call Road. The site is within the Northland Community Council and is zone C4 commercial. The site is currently, well, it has been developed, and there is a bank on the subject site. The applicant proposes to install a wall sign on the east elevation, which will not have a public entrance and won't be directed to a public right-of-way. Therefore, the maximum graphic area is 16 square feet. All right, this is the elevation. The applicant requests a variance to increase the graphic area for that wall sign from 16 square feet to 54.3 square feet. The Northland area plan states signage shall be sized according to the scale of the building, building facades, and the general streetscape, and not obscure architectural lines or details. I believe the Northland Community Council recommends disapproval of this request, and there are representatives from Northland to speak further about that. City staff is recommending approval, as it appears the proposed signage is consistent with the Northland 1 area plan guidelines and therefore is supported. We're not recommending any conditions, and we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am, would you present your case, please?
Yes, the sign that's proposed for the wall on the east elevation is proposed to match the size of the sign that's on the primary elevation. The building is set back from the road due to a service road that puts this sign a little bit further away for the traffic that's westbound on Morse Road when they're trying to see it prior to the intersection to turn into the shopping center. Additionally, there are multiple points of entry to the parking lot through the back and through the side streets, where patrons that are looking for the Bank of America may not be entering from the front or from Morse Road, but they may be entering from the back. The sign that is existing is approximately 10.6 square feet, and that's because the allowance for this elevation is 16 square feet. The sign that's existing, as you can see, it looks like a scratch on the wall. And the further away that you go, the smaller the sign appears to be, and it's not legible. So Bank of America is requesting a sign that's 54.26 square feet. But I did the math, and the sign that they're actually requesting is 49 square feet. After the submission was made, there was a dimensional error on the drawings that I had, and they want the sign to match the sign that's on the primary elevation, which is approved at 49 square feet. So this sign would also be 49 square feet. The property is also located in the Morse Road. There's a redesign, rehabilitation overlay that requires the property to have a monument sign. And because those design guidelines require them to have a monument sign, under the code, they would have alternatively been able to take their excess sign allowance from the primary elevation and transfer an unused portion of that to the side elevation. But because they already have a monument sign, they can't transfer their excess sign allowance. Their sign allowance for the primary elevation would have been 208 square feet. They only used 49 square feet. So there's 159 square feet of an excess allowance from the primary elevation that could have been transferred if those design overlays didn't require them to have a monument sign that is also minimally visible and not always visible to motorists, especially from the vantage point of which this sign is visible. The Neighborhood Commission doesn't agree that the site has any visibility hardships, and their photos, however, are all from a pedestrian perspective. When you take a look at this site from a motorist perspective, the photos are different. And I got those photos to Jamie at the last minute, so I don't know if he actually has them.
I do. Just give me 1 second.
So this is the vantage point that if you drive and approach this stop sign, you can see the next photo.
My eyes go.
From this vantage point, you can see the Bank of America building is hidden behind the trees, and the sign is not visible. When you approach the stop sign and you get to the stop sign, you would actually be able to see the sign there. But again, the sign is still not legible because it's too small. It's just from a motorist perspective, the sign needs to be larger for it to be legible from the interior and the side of the parking lot. Also for the eastbound traffic, and Jamie has another photo that he could bring up from the street light.
That's not it, is it?
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the westbound view. The bank is over here. This is the eastbound view, and the bank is over here. As you can see from a motorist vantage point, the wall sign that's on the east side of the building and towards the back of the building, it's not legible. You can't read it, nor is the front side legible, nor is the monument sign legible. And so this is a great concern for the bank because people that are searching for the bank are going to be approaching this intersection with a GPS telling them to go here, but they don't know where to go. So that is their primary concern. This is from the service road when you're in the parking lot. The monument sign is blocked by utility boxes. The primary elevation is blocked by trees. You can't see that either. And the side wall sign from a vehicle is also not visible. It's not legible. You can see that there's something there. And if you knew it was Bank of America, you might be able to guess that it's there, but you cannot tell that it's there. This is also within the parking lot. This is also within the parking lot when you're sitting at that stop sign from the back of the parking lot. The sign is there, it's in between the trees, but you can't read it. It's just simply not big enough. Bank of America feels that The sign is absolutely necessary for persons that are not necessarily familiar with the area and for those that are searching for the bank. And they are hoping that the board will consider the same, that it's necessary. Had they not been required to have a monument sign as part of their overlay, they would have foregone the monument sign, but it was required as part of the overlay. So the hardship is created by the Morse Road overlay that's preventing them from using their leftover allowance from the front elevation and taking it to the side, and by the visibility hardships that exist here to motorists that are trying to arrive at this location from the east. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this case?
Chairman Thompson, my name is David Paul. I'm the chair of the Northern Community Council. I would like to address the commission if I could.
Mr. Paul, I need to swear you in. Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. See.
Thank you. And I believe I shared some information with Jamie that he can also bring up on the screen. I'll try to keep it brief. I understand we're running a little long on this case. In fact, Ms. Deal mentioned earlier some photographs, and these are the photographs that she's referring to because I shared them with her earlier today. She stated they were taken from a pedestrian viewpoint. It's not entirely true. It is true. I was on foot with my camera when I took them, but I was trying to, in fact, illustrate what folks would see from various routes inside the parking lot that are drivable, as well as from the stop sign location that she referred to. Also, I will point out, and I'll come back to it a little bit later, we're all using cameras that basically incur some distortion because they have various focal lengths and so forth. I tried at one point during these photos to simulate what someone would see as they were using their own sight rather than using a camera, and I'll come back to that. What you're looking at is an aerial map that shows various locations from which I took photos. Those, if you look on the left, you'll see the bank. You'll see the circled sign facing Morse Road in the far left. Where Jamie was pointing just a moment ago, just to the right of that, you'll see a circle around the sign that is the subject of this variance request. And a little lower to the right, you'll see the monument sign that Ms. Deal referred to. The other markers on the map are, again, points from which I took various photos that we'll look at in just a moment. I would like to point out there is also a curb cut that's not included in the frame just to the west, that is to the left of the bank. So the traffic that was going westbound, in fact, could perhaps see the monument sign and turn right into that parking lot. And then, Jamie, if you'd go ahead and move to the next slide. This is a view actually from the same location that Ms. Deal was depicting. This is taken with a Canon SLR. And as you can see, the view looks quite different. Now this image was taken probably about 24mm lens. As you can see, it is certainly possible to make out the sign. It's not extremely large, but it is certainly possible to make it out. Let me back up before I proceed further and just say that part of the reason for our committee's recommendation of disapproval was that we do not feel that the applicant sufficiently demonstrated hardship. We understand that the bank would like to be more visible to everyone in all directions, including from the parking lots that surround them and so forth. All of the businesses along the Morse Road corridor would like to do so. All of the businesses that have frontage along the corridor are subject to the Morse Road overlay. We're not sure, our opinion, frankly, is that they did not demonstrate a hardship and they want more exposure. The question is whether the unique topography of their site and so forth presents them with challenges in terms of being visible. So in this frame, I am standing, but I am standing in the vehicle lane approximately where a driver would be, looking to the west towards the bank and down the service road. Go ahead and go to the next frame, Jamie. Now this is obviously at a higher focal length. I've zoomed in. The sign is visible. I realize, again, this is not necessarily what someone just sitting in their car without a telephoto lens would see, but it does show that it's unobstructed from that location. Jamie, please go to the next slide. Okay, in this case, I have stepped a little further south. I'm actually on the sidewalk. You can see there is a large tree there, which was visible also in the aerial view. It's obstructing the eastern wall of the bank. Frankly, even the larger sign proposed would be obstructed from this location. That tree that you see is in fact the largest obstruction that stands between viewers to the east of the bank, facing west, trying to view the sign. So from this location and also further out onto Morris Road, you would not be able to see a sign of almost any size in that location. What you can see, however, is the monument sign. You see it there on the left, as well as the wall sign on the south-facing elevation. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Jamie. Okay, this is actually a view, if you will, from the sidewalk. You can see that I'm standing on the sidewalk, looking in roughly the same direction. Again, the tree is obstructing the view. You can see there in the distance the monument sign and, in fact, the wall sign. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. I've actually moved a little closer, a little further, I should say, to the east down the sidewalk. Again, basically the same situation. You can see the small sign on the east elevation, partially obscured by the tree. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. Again, zooming out to kind of give you a sense of my location. I think the next slides will be more important, so go ahead and go to the next one, Jamie. Okay. What I'm doing now is I'm actually moving down the main entrance to this center, heading towards the Board of Elections. So I'm actually moving to the north. And I'm trying to depict here what someone would see from the interior circulation of the parking lot as they were looking toward the bank. Next slide. Now again, I've zoomed in. The Bank of America sign is not obstructed by anything. Again, it's not huge, but it is certainly within the current requirements of the code, and it is readable from that location. Keep going. Again, proceeding north. Here, you can see the sign. Again, it is somewhat obstructed by trees and by the lighting structures. Go ahead and go to the next slide. That's the view from this location, again, zoomed in. Next slide. And go ahead and go to the next one, Jamie. Okay.
Mr. Paul?
Yes, sir.
May I interject? Is your contention really that it's really just a matter of if they're on Morse Road headed west, they can make the turn after they pass the bank?
That is part of my contention, yes, sir.
And or that even though the sign is small and not very legible from the main entrance, that it isn't necessary for it to be legible from that distance?
Our committee's opinion is that it's not particularly necessary for it to be legible from the interior of the shopping center. Again, we don't feel that they established that necessarily as a hardship. Obviously, they would like to be more visible. We don't necessarily think that that's a hardship. What I am trying to illustrate is that, in fact, it is rather visible from the interior of the shopping center. Let's go ahead and skip forward in order to save some time. Jamie, please skip forward.
Would you be in less objection to this sign if it wasn't 49 and it was half that size? So only if it's 16 now and they want 49, if it was half, again, that size and 30 something, not quite as big as the other sign, but not quite as small as this one, would you still be an objection to it?
Obviously, that question wasn't presented to our committee, but my sense of the comments I heard from our committee is yes, that was not really, the percentage was not really the issue. and especially a change to 49 square feet versus 50 some square feet would probably not have changed the committee's opinion. Very quickly, what I'm illustrating here is I intentionally chose a focal length of 50 millimeters for these next 5 photos. These are actually intended to simulate what someone looking at the bank from the interior of the parking lot would see. 50 millimeters is generally considered to be roughly the focal length of human sight. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Jamie. I'm now traveling in the vehicle lane, I'm heading south, but I'm facing west, looking at the bank. I think the commission members will agree, it is certainly possible to see that that is a Bank of America. It's not overwhelming, but it's certainly possible to see that it is a Bank of America, which is really all that sign is intended to do. Keep going. And you can go to the next one. And the next one. Now here, again, we're getting into obstructions by the tree, but that's going to be true regardless of what face, what sign is on that elevation. Keep going one more. And one more again. Okay. And this is simply a shot from the service road further to the west of that curb cut, illustrating that again, as you get past that, you're now looking at the monument sign. You also can clearly see the sign on the south elevation. So really the only places that the sign on the east elevation is obscured are places where you probably can see these signs in any case. So again, our committee's contention is there isn't a hardship demonstrated here. If the applicant is saying that the hardship exists because folks in the parking lot can't really see the sign, our contention is yes, they really can from most points in the parking lot. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, this is
Have
Pete.
any yeah, Pete.
I have one question. Was this building constructed by Bank of America, or are they a tenant of a building that was designed and built by somebody else?
I'm assuming that's for the applicant.
Yes.
I do not know. And I'm not sure if anybody from Bank of America has been able to join the call today. There may be somebody on the call, but I do not know.
I can state based on my knowledge, if it's okay, that the bank was recently constructed. It has never had any other tenant in it. It was constructed to contain the bank that's there now.
I think that's correct. The bank was built from scratch, and this is a typical look for a Bank of America. This is not unusual for their buildings to look like this.
Yeah, my question really is that we're trying to add bigger signage to fix architecture that's not working in this particular location, in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a self-inflicted hardship, frankly.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Mike. It really does seem to me like because of the way the ground sign is that's there, and then there's that big, I think that's an electrical transformer that's kind of in the way, and there's some blockage. And then when I look at all those photographs of the east elevation, it just proportionally, the existing sign that's there proportionally just doesn't look right. It just looks like it's just a smudge on the wall. And it's a lot of people going in and out of that area there to the Franklin County Board of Elections. I think I don't see where it hurts. I don't see where it's hurting the public any to have that sign there. It's not adding clutter or anything like that. It's like the drawing I'm looking at that the client provided looks like that the sign that they have in there looks proportionally nice. I think the argument of a hardship can be made. I mean, in my mind, anyways, because of visibility heading westbound and into that parking lot, the visibility is hampered because of the need for the ground sign to be as short as it is, and because of the placement and the tree and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I kind of buy into what the applicant is suggesting.
This is Rich. I agree with what Mike just said. You know, I think what they're proposing, and it does seem appropriate for this site. I agree that where Mike said that it appears that the architecture, it's not so much the architecture, it's the physical items around there, being that transformer, the trees, etc., that really does create the hardship. I mean, there's no place else they could have put the building. So unless they went somewhere else. And I think this is an appropriate building for the area. It's a beautiful building, as a matter of fact. So I
tend to agree with you somewhat, Mike and Rich, but because if you're not very well sighted, the existing sign is very small to the naked eye from that last stop sign. I'm not sure that it needs to be quite as big as the one presented.
Mr. Chairman.
Read it, but just ma'am, just a second.
Okay.
If you didn't know the Bank of America, you didn't know the identifiers for the Bank of America and recognize it as such, it might be difficult to read.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, after my meeting with the neighborhood commission or the area commission, I went back to Bank of America and asked them for an alternative sign. And they proposed an alternative sign, which would be an 18-inch letter versus a 24-inch letter. And the 18-inch letter is 30.62 square feet. So the variance would only be 14.62 square feet. Whereas the previous variance that we had proposed was a variance of 33 square feet. So thereby reducing the requested variance by 50%. And the sign would still be legible at an 18-inch letter. Part of the biggest problem is that their trademarked logo is this delineated logo that cannot be adjusted. And so it's very hard to fit that within the 16 square foot allowance. And so this would be the 30.62 square feet, 18-inch letter set, which would still be legible, and it wouldn't get lost on the facade, as I'm hearing the other graphics commission members saying.
I tend to be more in favor of that, actually.
Would you anticipate that that would have a significant effect on the visibility from Morse Road itself? Because it seems to me that the concern with a smaller graphic is that it might actually create a safety concern for people on Morse Road who are, squinting to try and see it.
Yes, our primary concern isn't as much Morse Road as it was the service road and those that are entering from Tamarack. Tamarack Road, there's a point of entry to the shopping center for people to enter into the shopping center and come prior to this intersection. There's a way for them to get into the shopping center along Tamarack Road, and that is from the Board of Elections. In front of the Board of Elections, the sign is just simply not legible. You can't make out the letters. You can't fully decipher what it is. We know that it's Bank of America. So when we're looking at photographs, we can make it out. But if we didn't know that it was Bank of America, we wouldn't be able to make out those letters from that viewpoint. And that's where there's a stop sign right in front of the Board of Elections, that the bank is concerned about people coming from Tamarack at that stop sign, not being able to see it, sitting at the service road, sitting at that service road, I guess it's a stop sign, and not being able to see it where the other features are blocked. Those were their two vantage points that people have actually complained and said that they've come into the shopping center and they couldn't find it.
Okay, we're running a little late, so I really would like to make a recommendation that a variance be allowed for 30.62 square foot sign due to the legibility from the stop sign for this particular location. Do I have a motion
I'll move to, as stated, the 30.62.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Can we vote on this as conditioned then?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Hoy,
Yes.
Mr. Bender,
Yes.
Mr. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Mashinsky,
Yes.
unmute, please.
But it must be taking a while from where I'm at. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chair Thompson.
Yes, and it is approved, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the commission, and thank you, Mr. Freese, once again for your help.
Thank you.
Seeing no other business, Mr. Freeze, I think we are ready to adjourn.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.